this little video series is called Dying Dar's Way, Radically Real Spiels on the End of Life. I'm here again with my friend Karen Rose Tank, and we're going to take another stab at, this is part 2, and this is intended to share Karen's mandalas that she made from the time of her mother's passing in...
the end of 2016. She passed away on January 1st, New Year's Day, 2017.
Okay, so we're going to try having me handle the camera and Karen handling the mandalas. So there you go. Start with credit.
So I just wanted to say that a friend of both Dorothy's and mine, Wendy Young, taught me about drawing mandalas as a way of expressing yourself, and when you don't really know what to say or there doesn't seem to be words, you can just pick up some colored pencils or paint or markers. In this case it was markers, and just start with a circle and see what evolves. There's no right or wrong. And so I was with my mom for literally 4 weeks, a month from the time of her pancreatic cancer diagnosis. Now she was 90 years old, and so she lived a wonderful life, but still over the course of 4 weeks, she gradually declined, and I was with her for 4 weeks. She was in an assisted living apartment with my father in Florida. So I had lots of time to sit around, and every day I drew something different. So I'm going in order of from, as I was sitting there. This one kind of shows that I added some song, a Beatles song. What did I say? All you need is love, da 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 da. So, I just want to share with people that this was so therapeutic for me. And plus I could share them with my mom. And what's this one? This says, shine on, scatter the light, widen your heart. And then I drew a heart at the bottom. So you can add words to it. You can name your mandala after you draw it. See what comes to you. This one is particularly, this took me 3 days to do. And I named it Pink Grapefruit. So here I was in Florida, and we all know Florida's the home of grapefruit. And I just got really into the, more detailed in this particular one. Then the next day after that one, I did something different. So as you can see in all of them, I started with a circle, and they are all different, and they all sort of express what I was needed to emerge out of me for that particular day or a couple of days. What was this one called? So this one was called Connecting the Dots. At the end, I drew dots around the whole thing and connected them. Doesn't have to be profound. This one didn't really have a circle to start with, but it was called, the mantra for the day is, I'm in charge of how I feel. And of course, that's probably my, 12 years of working with Dorothy Mullen in suppers, and how you feel is data. So I'm in charge of how I feel. And I wrote down various ways that I feel, including I choose happiness, and humility, compassion, love, and most importantly, courage. Because being with somebody takes courage, and I was just doing what I had to do, but it does take courage. And grief takes courage, and being with somebody and your own sadness takes courage. And caregiving takes courage. So this was the one I wrote on and drew on the day of her death. So it was January 1st. And I don't know, it just started going around and around in a circle, and it was started with Goodbye Mom. And I thanked her for everything she had done for me, for being there for me all these years. And, you know, here I was with her. And one thing I want to mention that I wrote here is that I wrote, "We give you permission to leave us now." And we had wonderful hospice people with us. And one of the things they told us is that one of the last senses that people have is the sense of hearing. So even though they might not be responding, they might not be moving their bodies, they can hear you. And if you hold their hand,
Right.
they can feel that
Got
touch.
the full connection.
So-
So could I interject
Yes.
something here? Earlier when I was talking with the hospice people in the video series, I said that there were things that I wanted to communicate today while I still have the power of speech and I can still communicate. In other words, I wanted the Dorothy of then, October 20, whatever it was, 19.
2019, yeah.
Yeah, to be communicating with the Max Mullen, the Jamie, the Claire Mullen,
kids.
and my good friends in January, February, whenever I was going to die. I wanted that brain to be connected to those children because they would still be typical sentient beings, but I might by then be a vegetable or something. So I wrote down my messages from the intelligent, fully present Dorothy to my kids. And one of the most important things that I wanted my children to know was exactly what you said, that hearing lasts a lot long and people can be fully present and hear what their dying mother has to say to them. But because you, the guest or the visitor,
Right.
can't tell.
If you're responding, right.
Yes, you could be sitting there missing all the opportunity to communicate because you can't tell
Right.
that they can be fully present to you. So I would just like everybody within the sound of my voice to understand it's your job to err on the side of assuming greater competence because you will have no way to get it that there is still an intelligent person with you and may, like in the case of my friend with ALS, which is my worst nightmare disease, that you could be in the presence of someone who is struggling to be fully present to you, crying out to the universe, please let him know whatever, I love him, I hate him, whatever, please let this person know that I am trying to continue to communicate, even though it doesn't look to my son or whoever it is that I'm able to communicate. So
we were
this
really
is
lucky.
really important.
Right. We were really lucky that we had amazing hospice nurses.
Oh, that's
And-
everything.
yeah.
Put in big plugs for hospice.
Yep, hospice. Big plus.
Nonprofit hospice especially.
I think that, it was called Trust Bridge in Palm Beach County, Florida. And it was nonprofit, because I've donated. So I don't think you donate to for-profit ones,
should
do you?
hope
not. So those nurses are so skilled, and they would say, stay in the room, hold hands, hold feet.
Right.
And one of the things at the very end is we started singing songs and songs from our childhood, and then we started singing these Yiddish lullabies from her childhood. And in fact, my brother went to YouTube and started pulling up songs because we didn't know all the words to them. One was called Almonds and Raisins. It's called Raskines mit Mandolin. Yeah. And often Prippenstock. I don't know, that's Yiddish. But and believe it or not, while we were singing those songs and holding her hands, that is when she passed. because she was hanging on
She
and she
knew
was
that it was
laboring with
okay
her
to
breath.
go.
She was
Right.
like open mouth breathing, and we're like, Mom, it's time to go, and she
Can you
just wouldn't
demonstrate that?
go.
Can you demonstrate that open mouth breathing?
Oh.
So this is something that you need to know if
I don't
you're
know.
with somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, it comes with a very, very, very dry mouth.
Yes.
They have little twizzly things and
Like little
moisturizing
sponges,
things.
you know. Yeah.
Sponges.
You soak them in water, and then you sponge it in your mouth.
I'm gonna say, if you don't use these things, it's cruel.
You have to.
You have to keep on hydrating the
Yes.
person, because I will continue to be dry, and people won't know to hydrate my mouth when it looks like I'm not conscious. I am conscious.
Yes.
I am going to be suffering. I am going to be super, super dry in there, and I need somebody to be in there adding moisture to my lips and moisture to my tongue. I mean, the tongue starts looking like a reptile's tongue or something like that. And you want to know it is an act of kindness to hydrate that mouth, and an act of cruelty to miss that. Don't miss that.
But luckily, the hospice nurses know these things, and they're,
if you're lucky to
if you're lucky to have a hospice and to have a good nurse. Because, I will.
And if you don't watch this video,
and hydrate the mouth,
Right.
and so the dying person is worried for the living that they're going to be okay, and so we were advised to say we'll be okay, and we still had my dad, who was 95 or 96 at the time, and we said, we'll take care of Dad, don't worry about him, he'll be fine. This was one of the situations where the person who's the stronger one got cancer and left before our frail little old dad lived for another 2 years.
So are we done with your stuff? Because I want to ask about your frail little old dad.
Yes.
So Karen's father was expected to go first.
Totally.
Best
2 years.
laid plans. Everything was all lined up. And best laid plans, her mother got pancreatic, which is like, you got a matter
4
of
weeks. 4 weeks.
Yeah. And so they were suddenly rushed into a whole new scenario, and they were prepared for things to go a different way.
Right.
So, so talk about that transition, because some of us get caught short. Mom suddenly got pancreatic. This changes everything. Right? Talk about that.
Yeah. So there's a whole nother video we could do about how we got care for my father, my elderly father, in assisted living in Florida. And we had a phenomenal woman from Jamaica, a blessing in disguise, who took care of him for 2 years. And but he got pneumonia.
Did you hear that?
What did I say?
2 years.
2 years without my mom.
The family was off by 2 years.
Right. Now then again, being a single man in a assisted living is a little you make a lot of friends. So there's all the little old ladies who want to befriend you. But so it was wonderful. I mean, he had friends, people checking in on him, and
there's a Yiddish thing. Look who's bringing the brisket.
Right. Yeah.
Who's bringing the brisket? The woman that wants him next.
Right, yeah. And in fact, one time when I was visiting, a woman came up to me and she just pulled me aside and she said, "I'm very fond of your father." And
No surprise.
that was so sweet. He's like, "Yeah, she's nice," but he couldn't really engage in a relationship.
My father had to escape to a table of old men when my mother went first. Also, completely unexpectedly, my mother went first, and my father was 7 years older than my mother.
Right.
Which, what a pain in the butt. But anyway, for my dad, it was a real problem, because he lived alive.
Right.
And he lived a life determined by women his entire life long, including when my mother went and my sister became
Took care of him.
my sister became the primary woman in my father's life. Oh, brother.
So I wanted to share that my dad wound up getting pneumonia, and it was his third time with pneumonia, and the two other times he came back. Like, he went to rehab, and he works really, really hard. He had an incredible, he's part of the greatest, what they call the greatest generation, your father too. He was in the World War II, and he had a zeal for life that just, he wouldn't give up. And so here he is, this third time he's coming, we bring him home from the hospital with pneumonia, and he says, okay, make an appointment with a physical therapist. I need to get my legs moving again. This was after like a week in the hospital. And we said, she's not going to come, Dad. He's like, why? Just make an appointment. And he looks at us, he goes, what do you mean? Like, wait, are you telling me I'm dying? And we didn't know how to tell him because he'd always come back before. And this time his body, he had skin, what do they call it? Weeping edema. Mm-hmm. Your skin gets very frail. And other things were just starting. His body was shutting down and going. So when he realized that he was dying, and this was literally 3 days before he actually passed away, he called each one of us in the room to say goodbye. And he said goodbye to me, my sister, my brother, and thanked us for taking care of him, for all the love over the years. And he thanked his caregiver. The head nurse was there, who had been a wonderful help. He thanked him, he had tears in his eyes, and he thanked his caregiver. Oh my God, they were both crying, and then he said to us, so he wasn't speaking that well. He was kind of like using words, individual words, and he said bar, and we're like, or maybe this was the next day, bar, and we're like, what does he mean bar? He wants a bar, like, is there a bar somewhere around here? And then he goes, amaretto. We're like, amaretto? Oh, you mean that kind of bar, like the drinking. So he had this like stand, like a cabinet that was his bar. And sure enough, we go over to the cabinet and pull out, there's a bottle of amaretto. So we're like, we bring it over and we're like, Dad, you want some amaretto? I mean, he couldn't swallow either. And he's like, no, you amaretto. So he wanted us to start celebrating and drinking his amaretto. And it was just an indication of, he was thinking about others, and, I'll be fine, but you, this is my thank you gift to you. So, and then later that day, all of a sudden he couldn't talk at all. He totally lost his ability to talk, and he starts doing this 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, and everyone's like, okay, what does this mean? And he's like 3, 4. So finally his caregiver says, oh, 34, that's ESPN. The TV the channel ESPN. There was some basketball game on that he wanted to watch. So, and that was like a Wednesday, and he passed on a Friday morning. We were lucky with him that his brain was 100%, actually 150%. He was telling us stories we had never heard about his childhood and growing up in Brooklyn, and meeting Fiorello LaGuardia when he was in high school. He came to give a speech, and my dad got to walk him down the aisle of the auditorium. We're like, we never heard these stories. It was a very special time with him also, that my brother, sister, and I were there with him for a little over a week. And because you just never know, and time is important. not to be rushed. And so thank you for letting me share, and I'm
Thank you for doing it
so glad to be
together.
able to be here with my dear friend.
There we go.